August 1947. The British are quitting India nearly 200 years after they took power. One of the largest, most ethnically diverse nations in the world has been divided. One country will now become two, India and Pakistan. As a British barrister draws a line on a map, a once peaceful land implodes. People are forced out of the villages they have lived in for generations. 15 million scramble to be on the right side of the new border. At least 1 million die in the process.
And this huge mass of humanity just moving along, barefooted, no food, thirsty. It was a terrible sight, terrible sight.
Communities that have lived together for centuries turn on each other in one of the worst communal massacres of the 20th century.
It was so senseless, so utterly senseless. And yet, there's nothing you can do about it.
Britain, the once great colonial power, looks on as India burns.
Hindus and Muslims were in the grip of madness, lunacy.
In 1946, British India was largely at peace. On the surface, there was communal harmony between Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs.
In the same part of the village, I remember Hindus and Sikhs living side by side, living with us, Not far from where I lived, And whenever there was any wedding in the family, I remember Hindus and the Sikhs bringing sweetmeats, to my father, an offering, and we lived very happily, very happily.
In British India, the 255 million Hindus were in a majority. India's 92 million Muslims were concentrated in the northwest and northeast of the country. The 6 million Sikhs lived mostly in the Punjab, one of the richest and most diverse provinces in India. Lahore was its ancient capital. Lahore was one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the country, a center for education and fashion. Roded Khan, a Muslim, had left his village to study law and history at Lahore's Foreman Christian College.
Lahore took my breath away, because it was a different city, and it was a different world. It was a very liberal, very tolerant, very progressive institution.
At the same time, Somanand, a Hindu, was in his final year of school in one of Lahore's fashionable suburbs.
The fashions in Lahore became popular all over Punjab, not only in Punjab but in northern India. There was a famous saying in Punjabi that a person who has not seen Lahore has not been born yet. He is yet to be born.
In a few months' time, the peace of this ancient city would be shattered. For nearly 200 years, Britain ruled over India's 380 million people. India was the centerpiece of Britain's empire, a source of money and power. For the British who were stationed there, life had changed little in decades. John Moores, an officer to a Gurkha regiment, had been in India for a year.
We had a hunt, and they'd imported these hounds possibly in the 20s or somewhere like that, and they used to hunt jackal. The tribesmen would come in with a live jackal and release them eventually, and then the hunt would take it up and try chasing them. But then you had to have a whole brigade out defending the hunters. They would be deployed all round over 70 miles.
For decades, Indians had fought to rid themselves of British rule. The independence movement had been kept in check by ruthless military force. But by 1946, everything had changed. World War II had left Britain bankrupt. Mr. Moores and the other British troops knew that they would be the last.
We knew that having come through a very expensive world war, that the cost of maintaining an army in India following the Far East War, we realised that this couldn't be paid for. The taxpayer, England was in a bad state, particularly 46, 47, financially.
But India's independence leaders were divided over what should happen when Britain left. The Indian National Congress, under its leaders Pandit Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi, demanded a single state where all religions would live side by side. But many Muslims feared living under a Hindu majority. Even in the middle-class homes of Lahore, ancient prejudices ran deep.
At one level, they had very cordial relations. Our Muslim neighbors were very good. They helped us, we helped them. But see, Hindus had a curious inhibitions. My mother's attitude, she didn't allow any Muslim to enter her kitchen. Any cooked thing from a Muslim home was not allowed to enter the kitchen. When she was eating, she would not allow her Muslim neighbors, lady, to touch her. So such inhibitions and customs, they kept us apart.
In Lahore's old city, Muslims were forbidden from drinking from the same taps as Hindus. Zahur Uddin, a Muslim, was a champion wrestler from the old city.
बाकी असी लोग जाके लगले जाने पानी पींदे सा ना वो छबील तो पानी गिलास ही कुछ ही सान नहीं सन पियांदे वो ऐसा पानी भी नहीं सन पियांदे उन्होंने एक एडी एडी लम्मी नौजल रखी सी लोहे दी वो इत्थों फड़दे सन ते जिथे तुसीं बैठे हो ना उत्थों तक नौजल हुंदी सी इत्थों पानी पांदा सी ते असीं ऐसा पानी पींदे सा वो छूत तो भी सानूं छूत समझदा सी हिंदू.
The Muslims were not getting enough jobs, education, they were not so education. They envied Hindus who had the best of jobs, and they always wanted. That's why the slogan of a Muslim homeland became very popular among the Muslims.
Muslim fears that Hindus would dominate an independent India drove the demand for a separate Muslim homeland. It was championed principally by one man, a 70-year-old British-educated barrister, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. His Muslim League demanded the division of India into two, one country for the Hindus and Sikhs and another for the Muslims.
Once the British leave, and there will be a democratic form of government, you see, But in a democratic form of government, the Hindus will always be in a majority and the Muslim will always be in a minority. We have no chance. Our minority will never be transformed into a majority, And the Hindu majority will always remain a permanent majority. Therefore, we have no chance.